On this week's The Next Interview Show podcast.
I think it's important to remember that EAs can truly be your secret weapon. I mean, they absolutely can. I love the title of that book. It's great because they can make or break an executive.
Hi, I'm Doland White, and welcome to the Next Interview podcast. Before we get to the conversation that I have with my guest, I want to invite you to visit my website, dolandwhite.com/LWC, and download my book. It's called Lead with Confidence, 4 Bold Steps for Empowered Leadership. It's going to help you. It takes about an hour to read the book, but there's 4 pillars that I teach in the book. It will help you immediately apply some practical ideas and skills to your leadership. Let's get to the conversation. Hi, welcome to the Next Interview Show podcast. I'm Doland White. I'm your host. And today I have the pleasure of having a conversation with Teresa L'Heureux. And our conversation, I've been looking forward to having this conversation for some time. And we finally, after the end of the holidays and all of the things that go in our lives, have a chance to do this. For the sake of transparency, for you listeners and for those who have not met Teresa before, we have co-conspirated a couple of times together. We worked together. Teresa was my executive assistant, and for an extended period of time, although she was on probation for about 2 years, but we'll talk about that. And let's get into it. Let's just get right into it. Teresa, thank you for taking time. Thank you for, there's a million things you could be doing. Thank you for being here with me today. And introduce yourself just a little bit. Your background, where you're from, a little bit so people get to know who you are.
Well, first and foremost, Dolan, it's always a pleasure to do anything with you and co-conspire, actually. I love it. So, hi, everyone. My name is Teresa L'Heureux, and as Dolan said, I was his executive assistant, and I am calling in from Sacramento, California. I have 2 huskies at my feet and a bunch of cats with all different shapes, sizes, and attitudes. I'm in animal rescue. I moved out here from the East Coast to marry my husband, and we have an amazing life out here. We both love what we do. So it's, again, a pleasure, Dolan.
I'm so glad. Well, as we were talking a little bit before we started, before we hit the record button and said, okay, let's go. One of the things that I talk about when on the podcast, and I've had other executives on that have talked about this, is the fact that, to be an effective executive, especially when you're in custody of a large organization or a large team and all the responsibilities that come with it, is not to do it alone. And alone means many things. There are, you develop your leaders, you develop teams, you do that. But you need people at your side that can help you be more effective. And I think that's one of the things, not to offer a tip of the hat right out of the gate, but I will. That's one of the things that over our years together, we developed a relationship where you were able to intuitively help me be more effective and help guide me into here are the things that you're doing. So I want to spend some time talking about that, because I think there's a lot of value in that conversation for leaders. And I think a lot of leaders don't actually take that into consideration. They tend to be, male or female, they tend to be stoic, and, if I have help, I show weakness. If I'm showing weakness, I'm not, progressing properly. So I'd like to kind of get your thinking and hear what why do you need an executive assistant? And what the hell does that person do?
Well, a very wise man once told me about this book called The Secret Weapon of the CEO. And it's true. What a lot of executives don't realize is we can do so many things to make your life easier. We have our ear to the ground. A lot of people will talk to an executive assistant and tell them things they would never tell to anyone else. And I could come to you and say, Dolan, we need to handle this, or we need to do this. So from a strategic standpoint, you can actually help him or her move that needle a lot faster because of just little things that you hear and pay attention to. And you have to be very discerning as well. Read the room. The executive sometimes is too busy to do that. But you can say, we really need to talk to the chief marketing officer, or whatever is happening over there, or the chief financial officer. She's looking a little frazzled. So, we need to give her some love and care. Or it's somebody's birthday. Can I send some flowers? Absolutely. So it's one of those things where we have to be very well-rounded. And and you're going to laugh when I say this, I was always juggling at maximum capacity, but I loved every second of it. And you even asked me a few times, you're like, I don't know how in the heck you're getting everything done.
Yeah.
And, because we do a lot. We do a lot more. We're not just a secretary anymore. We're a confidant. We're someone to actually help you run the business. We're taking things off your plate and making things a lot easier for you. And you know that things are getting done. You know it. And I remember distinctly you telling me, I'm off this afternoon. You're in charge. And, I would do my best to make sure everything was run properly.
Yeah. So. No, it's funny you mentioned that, because I think that's a kind of a missing piece, I think, for a lot of executives, a lot of leaders. Forget whether you're an executive or not, because, titles are superfluous at this point. But right. I think a lot of leaders forget the fact that to be effective, it's important what you said, to be effective and to be able to do that at velocity and to be able to do that at scale. You can plan your day. You can do all of the stuff that you do every day. And there's a saying that, the better the plan I make, the more God laughs at me.
Yep.
And you can do all of those things. But you do need that individual working with you who hears things through a different filter, who is told things that you aren't necessarily going to get told, because
you're not privy to a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's a gap, I think, for a lot of leaders, because there's challenges with authenticity and trust and all kinds of places. So if they haven't crossed those barriers, there are things they're not going to hear. So one of the things that, across our relationship together, it grew over time, not only from an areas of responsibilities, because as our trust deepened, right, the kind of all of that worked through, as we worked through that, there are things that you did that changed your skill set, changed your career, changed your focus. And a couple things. The very first thing is, why did you do that? What drove that? And the second part of that is, because of that, what things did you do? What steps did you take to make you more effective in your role, rather than just saying, hey, I've arrived and I'm an EA and I'm here. This is what I'm going to do forever. So I'm really curious about that. So how do you, you're coming in and you're working with an executive, and how do you recognize, maybe this is a better question, how do you recognize that moment where, hey, I think we need this, and you go figure it out, or you go add the skill, or how do you do that? What's the secret sauce to that?
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to be curious. You have to actually want to know more about, why am I doing something? What does he really need? Since when I was working with you, I got my project management certification. So you could just throw any project at me and I was good with it. And now getting my Agile and Scrum certification as well. So that's just adding to the big pot. It just makes you more valuable and more multifaceted and more confident. When you would give me a project, I knew I could rock it out. I knew it. And I could present it in a way that it made sense. It wasn't just, I have no clue how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. No, I'm going to do it properly. And, then we could talk about certain platforms. I took Asana all the way. I came to you one day and said, I'm an Asana ambassador. And you're like, what the heck is that? I went through every single workshop they had.
Yeah.
And you said, wow. But that made me better. That made me more valuable. That made me able to go out into the other team of 12 executive assistants and admins and help them up level their game as well. And that was important. And I also think it, again, back to that confidence level, I remember a few times very distinctly telling you, no, this is not how it should be done. It should be done this way. But because we had built such a relationship, you stepped back and you went, show me, tell me why. And I was able to present to you and explain to you why I thought that was a no,
Yeah.
or we need to go in this direction. So, being a good executive assistant and really moving into having that partnership is huge. And again, it starts with trust. It starts with this responsibility.
Sure.
Integrity is very important. I believe that anytime you gave me something to do, it was off your mind. You knew I would do it. And if I had
Yeah.
any issues, I would come back.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I think I love the kind of the two comments around that. The first is being curious. What are the things? What is it? And really truly understand.
What does he really need?
Well, and I think by answering that question, what does he really need? You understand the context. So what's the meaning of what that person needs, right? Because people can talk about I need X. I need to raise my revenue, and everybody kind of goes, "Oh, okay, let's go raise revenue." But there's not any context around.
Well, and you have to
Why?
be that
For the sake of
person
what?
that asks why and how and who's involved and by when.
Right, right. And so I love that aspect around being curious and then being confident enough to develop. And I think in my mind, I think that's a component that is really important. Regardless of the EA role in any kind of relationship, there's a thing I say, it's a law in my mind. If you're in a meeting and you're in a meeting with three people frequently, and all of those three people agree with you at all times, get three other people.
Find new people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Find somebody who's going to challenge you to think differently or has an idea or is willing to say, so why are you thinking that way? When do you,
Right.
and
You have to question it, because if you just tell me, go do this, I need to know all the parameters. Why, when, how, who, what's the purpose of this? What do you need it for?
yeah.
Explain.
Yeah. So I think one of the risks, right, with in the role of being the partner, with an executive and as a EA, is that you've got an executive and he or she is resistant, right? And they're kind of in the mindset of, hey, if you could just, run these spreadsheets and blah, 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 and don't bother me, right? Just don't call me, right? So they're resistant to that. How do you, because it's reverse management, right? We talk about in leadership, managing up, managing down, not just
Yep.
managing ourselves, right? There's three domains of management per se. So how do you work with that leader to help inspire their confidence to grow their ability to go to velocity, to be able to scale, to be able to do more and more? What do you do as the EA to kind of help that person get there?
Well, over my career, I've worked with two C-suite executives that had never had an EA before.
Mm-hmm.
They had an admin, somebody that just worked on their calendar, but they really didn't have someone that looked
Sure.
at their emails and prioritized them for, that executive. So there were a lot of things that I had to prove how this was going to help. I had to show them. And I also had to show them that even if I don't do it the way you want it done, the bottom line is it's done, and it's done with higher priority and more responsibility and more, you're just getting more out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean in a bad way that I'm not coachable or EAs aren't coachable,
Yeah.
but
I hear you.
the bottom line is you want A and B done. Well, that's great, but I have to do C first. You might not realize that as an executive, but I have to get C done. And so I'll get that done, and then I'll do the other two. And a lot of executives, especially ones that have never had an EA, need to, get some things off their plate. They're spending way too much time doing, calendaring and well, it's easier for me to do it. Well, no, not really, because then when down the line, when somebody calls me and says, that meeting that was scheduled, no, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Oh, the Zoom link's broken. Oh, I didn't do it. So,
Right. Yeah.
um,
It's interesting. Yeah, because then it takes twice as long to get the one thing done. I think it's, and I experienced this with some of the folks that I coach. One of the challenges I think for people, and it takes a while to kind of get them through the process, is what you're talking about is autonomy. you have to be able to trust that you're looking for an outcome, and that everybody understands where we're going, and that individual will get there in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
But you get the question is, did you or did you not? Did you get there ethically, which is always first. You got to get there with an ethical
Right.
barrier, right?
Right.
And you can't rob, steal, or cheat to get there. But
Right.
did you get to the outcome?
Well, and that's why I love project management, because Agile's that way. Just do it. Come back to me. I'm not gonna, because if you spend your time holding my hand and walking me down the path, you could just do it. No, I want you to go away, go do something, go move the needle. I'll come back. We'll reconvene and I'll say, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a good EA does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like your, the thinking around, when you are working with an executive or a leader who has challenges, like letting go of stuff. And I think a lot of leaders have challenges with that because they're worried about the punitive thing, right? If I let it go, I'm going to get in trouble because this person didn't do their job, and therefore I'm going to get fired, or I'm going to get blah, blah, blah. Or we're all used to, we're raised in school with a grade A through F, right? And if you get an A, you get $20. If you get an F, you're going to get grounded. Not that, we're reflecting on my childhood. However, there is that kind of punitive nature that sits in the back of our neck that I'm worried that if I trust you to go do this, then you do it. And I think there's tips that leaders can do, but I think one of the things that's neat, and I don't know why we're aligned on this after spending years together, but one of the cool things around it is, it really, in my mind, is we've talked about this before, about the Mary Poppins thing, right? A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine. And it is helping. There's that as a leader, when you're working on autonomy, to be able to spoon it out and build it over time. But as you're also seeking autonomy, to spoon it out. And I think that's a powerful thing. I don't talk about that very often from that perspective, where you're the person trying to teach a leader to give you.
Well, it's
permission.
my job to teach you how to utilize my skills.
Mm-hmm.
That's my job. And it's also my job to show you my skills.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just hand you a resume. Oh yeah, I'm good at all this stuff. No,
Agreed.
I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that EAs can truly be your secret weapon. I mean, they absolutely can. I love the title of that book. It's great because they can make or break an executive.
Yeah.
And
I would agree.
I think that, being able to help that C-suite executive or leader get into strategically moving that needle and having growth within the company. I would sit back sometimes when you and I would finish a project and I go, yeah, we did that, and a lot of EAs don't congratulate themselves. They don't have the, celebratory dance. I would do the dance a lot because it was like, yeah, we did that. We did that. And I think that's important. And I think it's important for the executive or leader to always congratulate their EA, like, wow, we had a good week. Good job on, fixing all those meetings. I know it was a nightmare. Those words go a long way. Long way.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because you're talking, in my mind, you're talking about core, as a leader in a company, when you have the custody of people, those are core responsibilities. Gratitude is a core responsibility, and expressing gratitude is extremely important. Right. And celebrating wins and losses, and remembering that, in most circumstances, when you're running a company, it's really hard to crash it into the rocks. You're not going to hurt anybody.
We're not brain surgeons. Nobody's going to die.
Depends on the company. Depends upon what there are cases. Right. So one of the things then, it's one thing, with the autonomy part, right? As you're building autonomy and, demonstrating your value and your skills, and then being curious about what you grow over time. I think a lot of executives are reticent to follow through with communication and transparency.
And, it's interesting you say that, because I had one of my C-suite executives that had never had an EA before. Mm-hmm. I had to train him how to communicate. because Teresa, just make this happen. Well, I can't, because that doesn't follow protocol.
Mm-hmm.
It was my job to be the gatekeeper, not only for anyone trying to get to my executive, but kind of protecting the executive from himself
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
We can't do this. No, we can't do this.
Yeah.
It comes back down to saying no.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because I think one of the things that, as a leader, right, in an organization, when you're partnered with an executive assistant, because it does evolve into, if you're doing it right, it's a partnership. It is a
Yes.
business partnership. And in that role, I think one of the things that kind of transpires when that is, especially as you kind of relax into trust, because trust isn't trust and authenticity are their own things to relax into. But as you're kind of getting into that and getting further down the line, communication and transparency takes care of itself. One of the things that I'd like you to speak to a little bit, if you don't mind, is these things that you speak of from getting your project management certification, focusing on Agile, working on Asana, and for the sake of listeners, Asana is a complex, not user-friendly task management, project management software, which was, like a lot of companies, way too embedded, so you couldn't pull it out and do something easier. It is what it was. But all of those things you did on your dime, not on the company dime, and not on company time. But one of the other things that, as you're talking about communication, I think that's important is just spend a moment talking about why you pursued Les Brown and kind of pursued that, the Speaker Academy, and kind of what came from that and the benefits, first professionally, and then as we get a little further into the podcast, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on personally for you and your book and some other things. But what drove that and what benefits kind of came out of that professionally?
From an EA standpoint, graduating from the Les Brown Speaker Academy it's communication. I have to be able to communicate not only to you very succinctly, but also effectively and efficiently. I can't give you a dissertation about why this happened. I have to give it to you in one sentence. That's it. And so learning those things and graduating from Les Brown, and I do speak around the country, has helped elevate and up-level my communication skills greatly. So I just think it's very important, especially that most EAs now are working remotely. I only have the screen. This is it. This is all I have.
Yep.
And so I have to be able to be very succinct in what I say, very clear, very concise. And I have to not be afraid. Again, it goes back to that confidence. I always had confidence, and I think you know that. But it really did up-level me. Traveling around with Les Brown has been amazing. And utilizing some of the tips and tricks and techniques that he taught me and still does to this day, and in my speaking and what I actually present about has really helped.
I think that's an important fact, because one of the it's not so much about having an executive assistant who can do. I mean, the do becomes a piece of it, right? Do my schedule, do my blah blah blah, get me a flight, help me do stuff. Because then that gives that executive an opportunity to be at velocity and not but do other things with their time, right? So it gives them a multiplying effect. But as a representative of that executive, it's critically important that as an executive assistant, you have the ability to speak at a level that's at parity with the authority of the person, and authority from the term, not from a negative perspective, but authority of the person that you're representing. So you're not, you're not out of sync thinking, the person speaking is saying, well, this executive must not be that good because the person I just spoke to wasn't that good.
Right.
So it becomes an experiential kind of a thing. And we're flawed as humans that we listen for those kinds of things, and how people communicate and what they look like and what they say, how they behave, how they
Their
stand.
body language, everything.
Right. Yeah. There's so in my mind, there's a lot that goes into it. And it also, I think, from an executive's perspective, deepens trust.
Hmm.
When you know that as an executive, you're being represented at the highest level you can be represented at, it's easier to let go of things.
Hmm.
To your point earlier, you commented around and not worry about it getting done. You can let go and not worry about somebody representing you in a meeting or taking notes for you or covering something for you while you had to go do something else. So I appreciate that. The kind of the one of the last things as from an EA perspective, and then I kind of want to dive into a couple of personal things with you as an executive assistant. You know, I think one of the lessons is continuous improvement, continuous learning, right? So there's two sides of the bench. There are people who are considering or who are new coming into the role of executive assistant and admins becoming executive assistants, which is a different person, right? Different
Hmm.
role. And then there are leaders who are saying, I've got an admin who I'd like to become an executive assistant, or I'm going to get an executive assistant. What, if you could think of 3 or 4 steps or 2 steps on the admin to EA and on the leader to EA to help that person grow, what would you tell people go do these couple of steps? What things can they take action with that will help change their career, change their financial standing, change their presence inside of the organization? What would you tell them to go do?
Well, first and foremost, I would tell both sides to open up your mind and understand what you want that person to be in your work life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always wanted to be your partner, and you were looking at me to be yours as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. If you think of yourself as I'm just an admin, well, that's what you are. But if you say I am a rock star EA and I help Dolan, whoever,
Yeah.
rock this thing out, that's what's important. So I think that's first. Second, look at what you truly do every day. Do you use Google a lot? Do you use Microsoft? What are the different platforms that you use? All of them, every single one. Zoom offers workshops. And that's going to make you a little bit better, give you a little bit more of an edge. And that is what's going to set you apart as an amazing EA. But from the leadership standpoint, it's important that you respect, acknowledge, and appreciate what your EA is doing to up level their skills, not only in their personal life, but their work life as well.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. And I think it's one of the things, and I think as a leader, it's a responsibility of a leader is to make his team better, his or her team, right? His in the case because I'm a him, but it's the responsibility of that individual to make their team better. It's a responsibility of a leader to consistently be training their replacement. That's the role of somebody. So I love your comment around as a leader, seek things that will help this person be better at what they do,
Yep.
and help them and know the gaps. Know what do I want to fill? What am I looking for? Right?
Well, and again, that's back to, again, both sides. What's everybody's strengths and weaknesses? And that's everybody reading each other.
Yeah.
Where does my executive, where's his gray area? What, or her gray area? Oh, well, she wants to listen to, read all of her emails. No, she doesn't have to do that. Let's show her how I can make things better,
Yeah.
and vice versa. There's certain things that EAs do and they're just, 100% on. And then other things, maybe they're 97%. So it's okay. We're human.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out each other's strengths and weaknesses, lean on those strengths and up level those weaknesses.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that's an important point, Teresa. One of the things is that it's okay. There is if we are seeking perfection, we will not find it
We will be so disappointed.
on both.
But again, we're human.
Right.
And I truly believe that, we're going to have misses on both sides. There's
Yeah.
going to be misses everywhere. But what needs to happen is, you move on and you learn from it And the best thing is that you have all those 5,432 wins that you had all week. Look at
Right.
those, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, very true. Well, I think these are some really, we could go on and on and on and on and talk about this role forever through all the
Right.
experiences that we were in, but I appreciate the insights, and I do strongly believe that, as an executive, there are people that you need in your corner. You need a solid team. You need a mentor. You need to be in some sort of a mentor group, masterminds. Your buddies can't help you. You need to be someplace where you're with people in your career who are above you, that challenge you to rise to their level,
Right.
right? And you need that person who is at your side helping you be more effective, so that you
And
can.
as an EA, when you're in those executive meetings, you are part of the executive team. That's the first word in your title, executive assistant. You're part of that executive team. So
You are.
having that mindset that you are actually helping to move that team forward, move that budget, move that number, move those sales, whatever it is that you're doing, you have to have that mindset. You
Yeah.
absolutely have to have it.
Yeah, I agree. I also believe that to be successful in any role, you have to have outside interests.
Yeah,
You have to have
absolutely.
joy in your life. You have to have things that you do and outside interests. And so I'm going to give a little bit of a shameless plug, um, and I ask you to talk just a skosh about, and not leave the camera because I forgot to pull it off my bookshelf right here. But and talk just for a moment a little bit about your book, what you do, um, and then how the benefit that you've brought to what is now a large community, um, by helping people through this. So let's start with a little bit about your book, and let's go from there.
Well, my book is called My Rock, My Hard Place. It's my journey through the darkness of domestic violence. I am a survivor, but I'm also an advocate. I started My Rock, My Hard Place when the district attorney and we were awaiting trial for my abuser, and he asked me to keep a journal. And I kept writing and writing and writing, and that writing became my book.
Mm.
And it sat up on a shelf for a while. And a couple years ago, I got it out, got it published, put it out, started a 501c3 Survive, Rise to Thrive Foundation. And we help victims, survivors, and their pets get out safe and together. So we've helped people, we're international actually. We've helped the Philippines, Canada, Mexico. And I'm very proud of that. We have an amazing organization. We have unbelievable network. And a lot of people, when I say that, victims, survivors, and their pets, they go, what? 70% of victims stay if there's a pet involved, because shelters don't normally take your pets. But we've networked with foster and boarding across the country so that you can get out with your pets. And I'm very proud of that. And I think one of the things that helped me bring to my work life was tenacity, being able to be disciplined and dedicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I love all that. And I've got the next two books will be out here in the second quarter of this year.
Good.
We'll have, I always wear my purple Converse because a lot of people forget about domestic violence. We have 1 month, that's it. We don't need to think about it again. Oh no, we do. So I wear my purple Converse whenever I'm on stage and know that I'm going to be photographed. And of course, Les Brown had something to say about that because they weren't red. He loves red. But the second book is The Girl in the Purple Converse. What is she up to now? Just what I'm doing and how I'm speaking. And I've been very fortunate to be asked to speak. I've been all over the country speaking, and that's been amazing. And then the third book is Lunch with Myself. If I could go back as a domestic violence survivor and speak to my victim self, what would I say? And I've interviewed over 500 survivors.
Really good. That's exciting. I think there's I think there's a misnomer in business and in companies where, when you have an individual on the team who is rising to meet a cause or write a book or do these kinds of things, there is a sometimes I think a tinge of I'll call it a threat, right? there's a little light that goes off on some people's shoulder that says, well, do I really have her attention? And do I really have this person's dedication? And do I really, have that? One of the reasons why I want to mention these, other than to make sure that as listeners, I will encourage you to pick up Teresa's book. Her Amazon link will be in the show notes. So you'll be able to find the link easily and go get the book. I would encourage you to do that. It's a good read. But the other part is, I think, to your point, you actually become more effective in your role by being more effective in the parts of your life that extend a different kind of joy. There's a joy that comes out of succeeding in your career.
Yep.
There's a joy that comes out of our extended life. And when
Absolutely.
we bring those together, plus relationships and, mention, I don't know, we'll mention Cliff by name and how cool Cliff is, but,
Right.
but all of those things combined make us bigger and more powerful.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting, when I did launch my book, I shared it with a lot of my coworkers, and a lot of people came to me. Either they were in a violent situation at the time, or they'd gotten out of one, and they just couldn't believe it. They said, "Oh my gosh, you're so confident, you're so effervescent, you're so out there." And I said, yeah, because I went through that. That's why I'm the way I am. That's why I care so much. That's why I'm so empathetic and sympathetic and have that trait, which I would never want to get rid of that ever.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I appreciate all of that. As the child of an abuser, I understand it deeply. So I'm grateful for that. So look, we're at the end of our time together. My promise to you is this amount of time. So I want to keep my promise. But for those of you who've been listening to the podcast, a couple of things I'm going to encourage you. The very first thing is, if you found the podcast enjoyable, if you like the podcast, give it a like, give it a follow. If you're on YouTube or Rumble, it's on Rumble, on the Rumble channel there. Give it a follow. We'd love to have you know. And that tells you when we're coming. Subscribe to the channel. What's even more important is that if you know one or two people that the content of this podcast can help, a leader or a person aspiring to change their career or learn something new, share this podcast with them. Help them become better at what they do. And by helping them become better, it's a multiplier. It compounds the effect. They help other people become better. So
and you become better as well. Everybody.
You do. There is a law of reciprocity that comes out of that. So share it. On that note, thank you, Teresa. Thank you for taking time to come talk with me today. I am grateful for you. Remain grateful, and look forward to more conversation.
It has been such a pleasure. It always has been. I want to say goodbye to all your listeners. My name is Teresa L'Heureux, and I have been speaking to you on the next interview show with my buddy Doland White.
Thank you. All right, we're out.
You've been listening to The Next Interview. For more information about today's guest, be sure to visit the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow and be sure to join us here on The Next Interview.